Some of my Republican friends want to take the economy hostage. Instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the proposal. That means Congress doesn't vote.
Wow, that was President Biden at last night's State of the Union address. Lawmakers booing and calling him a liar after he claimed that Republicans want to end Medicare and Social Security, something Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, shot down and continues to shoot down. He also said that he will not allow America to default on its debt. Joining me right now is Pennsylvania Congressman, Freedom Caucus Chairman, and member of the House Oversight and Foreign Affairs Committee, Scott Perry. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks very much for getting up early for us. We know it was a late night. Give us your takeaway on the night.
Indeed. Well, it was a little bizarre and out of touch with reality, Maria. But look, we're Republicans. We want to be respectful. We don't turn our back on the president. We don't all wear the same color in protest. Obviously, you know, we know there's going to be some disagreements, and we'd rather a Republican be president, but he's the president, so we're going to go and listen. But when it's going to get a little rowdy when you attack in such an outrageous way, I mean, it's the standard go-to line for Democrats when they don't really have anything to offer, which is Republicans are going to push Granny over the cliff and take your Social Security and your Medicare. Not one Republican in the House of Representatives is talking about changing Medicare or Social Security benefits. Not one. And, of course, the president couldn't name one. So, look, we want to be respectful, but let's kind of try and stick to the facts a little bit. And it was just completely out of touch with reality. You're talking about, pushing back on America's greatest adversary, China. For goodness sake, there was a Chinese spy balloon that flew over the country for a week, literally the day before. Yeah. You're talking about how great the economy is. He's talking about raising taxes. The federal government is taking in more revenue than ever before in history. A few weeks ago, they spent $1.7 trillion and literally days later came out and said, we have a debt crisis. Yeah. Well, you could have fixed it a couple days before this, and now you're blaming us?
Well, that was the most stunning thing to me, that there wasn't any discussion about sort of the elephant in the room, the balloon in the room, if you will, the fact that we had this spy flight flying across America for an entire week. This seems dangerous. We don't know exactly what this spy flight took back to the CCP. But while we're on the subject of the president attacking Republicans for what he says are their desired cuts, where do you see room for cuts? We know that the Speaker has talked much about needing a promise before an agreement that the debt ceiling goes higher, a promise that we will see structural change in spending or some boundaries in place. So if you're taking Medicare and Social Security off the table, where specifically would you intend to cut?
Well, Maria, most Americans get, and of course, even the president recognized it when mentioned it last night, the pandemic is over. So in 2019, we're spending about $4.5 trillion. And then in 2020, with the pandemic, $6.5 trillion. Guess what, Maria? We're still spending in the neighborhood of $6.5 trillion. Where are all those trillions going if we all agree that the pandemic is over? And oh, by the way, of all the problems the United States of America has and how to fix them, the solutions to fix them, not one of my constituents said, Perry, you know what? The best answer is to hire 87,000 new IRS agents. Why don't we start looking at where we're doing things that we don't need to be doing anymore? And let's just start there. We understand that these are difficult, intractable problems. But again, the Biden position of I'm not going to negotiate is one that most Americans feel is irresponsible and untenable, and they're absolutely correct.
James.
Congressman, I wanted to ask about that Biden position. So he says he's not going to negotiate spending reforms. He originally cast it as a partisan Republican message. Then 2 weeks ago on this program, Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat of West Virginia, said, yeah, we ought to reform spending. It's out of control, and he kind of laid out different ways to do it. Have you seen any signals from the White House, the president or his representatives on Capitol Hill, that he is ready to acknowledge reality, ready to accept that this actually is a negotiation? If he wants a change in the law to go through the Congress, he needs to negotiate with the Congress.
Yeah, I think the closest thing we saw to that was last night. Unfortunately, again, a little detached from reality. He says one thing that sounds like it's popular, but like his actions really belie that. So, he says he wants to work together, and then he calls everybody extremist MAGA Republicans on this side of the aisle. So we need actions to match up to rhetoric, and so far they don't. And that's why I said it's kind of a little detached from reality. Look, we're ready to roll up our sleeves and get down to business. We have been, but we need a willing partner on the other side of the negotiation table, and it can't just be rhetorically. We actually need you to mean it, and I didn't see a lot of that last night. But I think over time he's going to come to that position because it's the only realistic position to have.
Let me ask you, Congressman, about the border. The president tried to be tough on immigration. Yeah. He discussed the border crisis, though, for less than 2 minutes. The House Oversight Committee holding its first border hearing yesterday. And Democrats are really minimizing this crisis, have been from the start. The president is claiming he's not to blame, nor is his policy. Watch this.
A ton of hyperbole and posturing, saying that President Biden and his administration have created the worst border crisis in American history.
What we've seen from my colleagues is tweets that say, over 800 pounds of fentanyl seized. This is Biden's border crisis. That's a tweet from Rep. Stefanik. To me, the fact that you're seizing these drugs is a success.
Oh, wow. That's a success. Wow. Congressman, your thoughts?
Yeah, success is not 100,000 annually dead from fentanyl and other opioids coming across the southern border. So, look, we ran through the numbers with the Democrats over President Biden's border yesterday in the first ever hearing in 2 years in the Oversight Committee about the border. And you could see the dramatic change. I asked the Border Patrol, what changed in 2020 when the numbers went up 4 times, and then when the numbers went up 5 times in 2022. What was the one thing that changed? Of course, the Border Patrol's, their interest in securing the border hasn't changed, and the law hasn't changed. You know what has changed is the president's refusal to follow the law, and of course, Americans are dying because of that refusal. And the lack of a discussion yesterday in a real meaningful way, or last night at the State of the Union, about the border and about this scourge of fentanyl hitting every single state in the union, is really telling that the president has no interest in securing our border, and the fruits of not securing the border are dead Americans across our country. Unimaginable.
Well, Congressman, real quick, we only have a couple of seconds here, but what is your vision here in terms of these hearings? How many more hearings? Where is this going? What are you trying to accomplish?
Well, what we're trying to accomplish, we don't have the executive branch, so we can't make the president follow the laws. We are lawmakers. The laws are on the books. He refuses to follow them. But in the hearings, what we're trying to showcase to the American people is the reality of what's actually happening on the border, even though much of mainstream doesn't want to cover it. Yep. And President Biden and the Democrats don't want to talk about it. It is problematic for the country, and it is affecting every single community, not just the ones on the border. And they have been blinded to that for the last 2 years because Democrats don't want to talk about it.
Congressman, thank you. Yeah. Good to see you. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Congressman Scott Perry.